Hello and welcome back. This is SRJ26 and this is my tutorial series. Today we are going to talk about gathering sand, specifically gathering sand on a multiplayer server. I'm standing here in a small woods-like area, but in actuality I am not in the woods. I am on the sea floor. I am in the bottom of a large undersea build I've been working on that I've not yet really announced to the public, but I will at some point. And if we go up these stairs over here, I will show you, I have been gathering an awful lot of sand and turning it into glass. And if you also have a project that requires ridiculous amounts of sand, I highly recommend that you learn how to gather it in ways that are not going to annoy the people around you on your SMP server. There's a thing called griefing, environmental griefing. And environmental griefing is when you go and pick up the blocks in the environment, particularly sand or anything else, but sand is a big culprit, in a way that causes a lot of damage and is ugly for other people who happen to live nearby. So I'm going to show you a few ways that you can hopefully avoid environmental griefing while gathering sand on an SMP server. There was a time when I would tell you, if you wanted to gather sand, to simply grab a door and go to the bottom of any nearby ocean, put it down, and use that air pocket to gather all the sand around you. But now that we have deep ocean biomes, you can see behind me, the ocean behind me was covered in gravel. So you can no longer really use oceans, or at least deep oceans, to gather sand in large quantities. You may find it in the more shallow oceans, but deep oceans are not going to be a good option for you. Of course, oceans do have islands, and if you're lucky enough to find a small sandy island that sort of sticks up out of an ocean or out of a deep ocean, you might be able to raise it. You might be able to take everything off the top and get a really large quantity of sand. Just be careful that you're not pulling up an island that's near where someone lives, because they might have plans for it, and you wouldn't want to turn around and find the island you were going to build a bungalow on to suddenly be destroyed because some guy wanted to get a whole bunch of sand to make some ridiculous glass monstrosity. So it's a good option, but just be careful and talk to people in the area before you go destroying any islands. One good place to gather sand is actually on riverbanks. That may not seem to make sense, but I think I can show you how it works. Very simply, you go over to where the sand is. Let's go over there. And you dig straight down, and there's actually a fair amount of sand here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to put some dirt back where it was. So 1, 2, 3, and instead of putting the last one as dirt, I'll put the last one as sand, and no one ever knew that I did that. So if you find that you're in an area with a lot of riverbanks with a lot of little sandy edges on the side, you could just 1, 2, 3, go ahead, and I just got 2. I'll put some dirt down, 1, 2, and I could leave it that way, but I'm going to put some sand back just to make sure it looked exactly the way it was when I arrived. So if you're in an area that doesn't have any deserts, but you really want sand, but you don't want to destroy the environment and make it look like someone was messing around, yeah, there's a lot of sand there. You just have to know how to get it, and if you're clever, you can get it without anyone ever knowing that you were there. One more, 1, 2, 3, and put some dirt down. 1, 2, and let me put a sand on top, and that's how it's done. Of course, the best place to gather sand is a desert. If you see the desert behind me, you can notice that it's actually quite flat. Usually desert's a little bit more hilly, but the section I'm on is really flat. And there's a reason for that. Someone's been here gathering sand. And it's not a bad place to gather sand, but I recommend that when you do it, it's pretty simple to pick it all up, but you want to wind up leaving it looking fairly natural. If you hit any sandstone spots, leave sand where the sandstone was so it doesn't look like someone was griefing and gathering sand. Let me replace my shovel there. Okay, and The edges, if you're going to gather large quantities of sand, don't leave a nice hard edge with a nice flat line. Leave a curve or an edge of some sort that looks a little bit more natural. It'll just make it look better for the other people who happen to play on the server. We'll wander around. You can see how flat this area is, so I think a lot of people have probably been gathering sand. Over here you've got a nice flat edge. Someone's clearly been gathering here, so if I just sort of add a nice little curve, now you could easily come by and never even realize that someone was gathering large quantities of sand. So it's just a little tip to try to make it look a little bit more natural. You can still get all the sand you want, but you can make it look like no one was actually there, which is kind of nice. If you come over here, it looks like someone was messing around. It could have been creeper explosions, or it could have been someone just sort of randomly gathering. Let me fill it in. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone was gathering here. Let's just take a closer look after we fill this in. Oh, look at that. So we've got some sandstone here, and it's a creeper hole, obviously a creeper hole. So we can sort of check this out, maybe put a couple more back in. And I bet we can even figure out who is there by using a log block. Let's take a quick look. And is that Crown Fire? Crown Fire was gathering. So Crown Fire, you gathered some sand, but you did it in a way where it looks like someone was kind of griefing the environment here. And you might not think it's a big deal, but when you keep in mind that multiplayer servers have sometimes dozens or even hundreds of players coming onto it, some of which might play for a while and then leave and not come back, you can have an utterly devastated environment. So don't do that. Don't just come and pick up whatever you want and leave it as if no one cares. I'm probably not going to cover this over right now, but try to cover up your tracks when you're done. So I'm about to tell you the single best way to gather sand in large quantities on an SMP server in a way that no one will ever know. It's even better than the Riverbank method. Behind me you'll see a little peninsula sticking out into the water there. That is our target. Let's go down there and take a closer look. You'll see as we get closer that there's actually a fair amount of sand at the bottom. Someone's already been gathering here, but if you imagine taking this little peninsula and pulling back that bottom edge under the water and digging it away in a nice gentle curve so that it still looks like it could actually be a natural landmass, and cutting it away maybe all the way back over to here, you could get a lot of sand, stacks and stacks and stacks of sand. And it's not that hard. I mean, you can simply come over here and dig down the sand that's a little bit further. You don't even have to go underwater at first. And eventually you will, but it's not that deep that it'll be a problem. Because you're near the ocean edge, you're going to have fewer mobs to deal with. It's not like you're in the middle of a desert. And eventually, yeah, you'll have to come down underwater and sort of get some of the harder to reach spots if you want to make it look good. But just slowly pull it back, pick up the dirt so you can use it later for riverbanks or for whatever you need. Let's go down and get that. And this last one, Aqua Affinity will help a lot because it'll make you dig stuff faster when you're underwater. And respiration, of course, is a good idea as well. Respiration, of course, will let you breathe underwater, and potions or helmets of respiration, potions of water breathing will help an awful lot. As I said before, the deep ocean still has gravel, so you can come down and you can sort of see that there's gravel going down that way, but up here there is plenty of sand. So if we just get up top here, you can hopefully get a good idea for how much sand, if we start pulling it away, the water will reform itself and make new source blocks. And you can just sort of peel it away. And again, don't leave a flat edge. Just try to make it a nice curve, and you will be able to get, dozens of stacks of sand if you do it right. And if you especially do it right, no one will ever know you were there. I don't recommend doing this in a spot where there are a lot of other players living, because they might realize that suddenly their landscape has changed. Suddenly the little peninsula that they used to go out on and fish on is now completely gone. And that's not good. So try not to impact other players. Let me put this back here. There we go. Try not to impact other players. But if you use this method, you will be able to get just ridiculous quantities of sand. Now, everything I told you is good, but there is an even better way to get sand. If you are on a server that has multiverse installed or can do multiple worlds, talk to your admin, see if they can add what's called a resource world. I saw this tip on OMG Craft, which is a podcast done by OMG Chad, and what they'd have is they have a world set up specifically for, well, for environmental griefing, for getting large quantities of whatever you want, and they reset the world regularly. So if your admin can set up a separate world with a portal and you can just use that for griefing, no one can ever complain if it gets utterly destroyed because that's its purpose. And then periodically you just reset it and you never have a problem again with someone just destroying your environment. Just go to the resource world. Works like a charm. Now you may wonder why I'm in the nether. Well, you're not going to actually gather any sand in the nether, but this is actually a pretty good tip. If you go to the nether and you go a long distance, so let's say I'm going to run a long ways. This happens to be another fort that I've set up and claimed and I'm protecting so that it doesn't get griefed so we can do wither hunting. But if you go a long, long, long ways in the nether and put up a portal and go back out into the overworld, you can wind up really, really far from where anyone lives. It's dark, so I'm just going to try to be quick about this. I don't want to get any mobs dancing on my face here. But let's go over, see that sand over there? Let's make sure, nope, okay, good. So we're at 9,000 blocks away from spawn. So 9,000 is far enough that you're probably not going to have anyone complaining that you're destroying their environment. I still think you should use good methods in terms of picking up all the sand. You know, try to make it look as natural as you can because, after all, you're playing on multiplayer with other players. Presumably that's because you actually like other people, unless you're a griefer and you won't last long. But if you're like most of us, you want other people to actually think you're playing with them and not against them. So try to be considerate, and if you're going to carve away edges of a landmass, give it a nice edge, make it look good, and no one will ever know and no one will ever complain. So that is one of the best tips, is go really, really far away, and then its chances are fine no one's ever going to care. And you can get an awful lot of sand this way. So those are all the tips I have for you today. Thank you for watching. This has been a tutorial on gathering sand, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have some crazy, ridiculous, large-scale project involving monstrous amounts of glass that you need to build, well, try to be considerate of your fellow players and don't grief the environment. You two can get along well in SMP. Just give it a little thought and care about your fellow players' experience. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.